ITX is a special kind of form factor. I mean, sure, they include compromises as any downsize would, but when done right, ITX PCs can look elegant and boast tons of power. You all know this. ASUS nailed it here with their ROG Strix X470-I gaming. They went after the fantastic chipset capable of handling 8 cores and 16 threads in such a small space is incredible, and stable memory overclocking, which is a big thing with Ryzen 2nd Gen. We'll put all three to the test in this video, but first, a run through of the board's I/O and features. Let's start first with the rear I/O and work our way around fan hubs and drive support. Near the top, you'll find an HDMI port, good for Raven Ridge APUs at this point. Still nice to have that onboard flexibility. 4 USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports lay just below that, followed by 2 USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports. The big difference here, these 4 cap at 5 gigabits per second and these 2 cap at 10. An Intel RJ45 port resides here as well. You'll find AC Wi-Fi to the south, along with built-in Bluetooth and LED illuminated audio jacks, boasting the quote Supreme FX S1220A codec and dual operational amplifiers on a secondary PCB. In typical ASUS fashion, this is definitely overkill. I'm counting only 3 PWM fan headers here, and they're all situated above the CPU socket. I would have liked to have seen maybe them spread out just a bit more along the edge of the board. Also, 3 is just not enough for an overkill ITX PCB, though I imagine space was a serious concern here. This thing is pretty dense with features. ASUS managed to cram the 8-pin all the way into the immediate upper left-hand corner of the board. This is actually an ideal spot and follows suit with traditional ATX counterparts, though it might be difficult in some ATX cases to actually connect the 8-pin to this header. To the right of the fan headers, you'll find 2 RGB LED strip ports. One is certainly necessary, but I feel as though this add-on header here should really be replaced with a 4th fan hub. Most RGB kits include splitters anyway, so I wouldn't be as concerned with LEDs as I would be with fan support at this point. 2 RAM slots run along the right side of the board with an array of boot status LEDs aligned just above. This is like Dr. Debug on a simpler scale and can be very useful when diagnosing troublesome hardware. The 24-pin connector laid just to the south, along with front I/O and speaker headers if you're into hearing beeps every time you boot your PC. There aren't many SATA 3 ports in this board. I'm counting 4, all of them upward facing, and only 2 of them are planted along the right side of the board. ASUS have also managed to cram both USB 2 and USB 3 headers onto this board with just enough space on the bottom right corner for the standoff and screw. There are 2 M.2 ports on this board as well. The one integrated into the sound card runs with 4 PCIe lanes and can also be used with SATA drives. The second one, located on the back of the board, is PCIe only, so you can't use SATA M.2 drives with this back port here, in case you're wondering why your drive isn't being read. By the way, if you're wondering where the HD audio port resides, it's right here, built into the second PCB layer and wedged under the Wi-Fi card. Cable management might be an issue with this one, and it'll look pretty weird having a cable run above everything below it. I actually managed to squeeze mine between this upward heat spreader here and kept things a little more concealed. By the way, in case you're interested, an array of RGB LEDs runs down the right side of the board along the back for a subtle underglow. In most cases, it actually looks pretty great. The Strix logo centered below the CPU socket also lights up, though it's more subdued. Overall, I think this is one of the sexiest ITX boards on the market, not just from an LED standpoint, but also from a heatsink and just overall aesthetic appeal point of view. It's just a good looking board. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. So that's a rundown of the motherboard's features, and now let's talk overclocking, thermals, and stability. You'll find 6 power phases to the left of the socket with a fairly large VRM MOSFET heatsink to keep things nice and cool, and while this is nothing in comparison to some of the dual 8-pin EPS X470 ATX motherboards on the market, 6 phases should be plenty in this form factor for decent overclocks or native XFR, and we've proven that here. Power consumption and delivery as well, we'll reveal shortly, were comparable to ATX counterparts, so there's no unneeded power draw from a smaller form factor. The CPU we used to run our tests was the Ryzen 7 2700, the lower TDP brother of the 2700X. In all reality, it's actually the better buy in my book. Overclocking differences, if existent at all, are minimal, and even XFR2 boosts bring the cheaper chip to within 5% or so of the competition from a raw performance standpoint. The only tangible thing you're really foregoing here is the beefier Prism cooler. Again, if you're buying an aftermarket cooler, it doesn't matter, but if you're using the stock cooler, that could be the difference. For RAM, we're using a 16GB kit of Team Group Nighthawk RGB modules. There are Ryzen specific kits you can buy for optimal overclocking support, but I'm using these to prove a point that Ryzen 2nd Gen CPUs have significantly higher memory frequency tolerances, conducive in the gamer's case to higher frame rates thanks to Infinity Fabric dependencies. I used a Deepcool Captain 240EX to keep temps in check. The black color scheme going on here is looking especially sexy in my book. The Strix X470-I's accents are the icing on the cake. I do recommend, however, running other fans in your case to actively cool your VRMs. Things were perfectly fine in the NZXT H200i with an exhaust fan at the back. Manual overclocking, even up to 4.2 GHz across all cores, yielded some of the best VRM temps I've ever seen in an ITX motherboard. These were confirmed, by the way, both by manually probing and in software. And transitioning soundly into our next topic, overclocking, I didn't notice any immediate hiccups reaching 4.2 GHz. I literally hopped into the BIOS. All ASUS BIOSes are pretty much the same at this point, and I love that. They're all very just uniform. You can expect to have the same BIOS regardless of which chipset you're going for, whether it be on Intel side or AMD side. Hitting 4.2 GHz straight up, and I also boosted the DRAM frequency. I'm pretty sure I just activated XMP and then straight up reset, saving those features. Sure enough, confirmed 4.2 gigs across all cores. It was a piece of cake with this board here. To be clear though, you may not even want to overclock. XFR2 does a pretty excellent job scaling core frequencies with workload, and some cores might actually hit higher than 4.2 gigahertz, especially when you're gaming and the game is only utilizing maybe 4 cores max. So you might actually get a higher frame rate using just XFR2 and not manually overclocking. That's a subject for a different video, but for now, if you want to overclock, you certainly can with this board. Another major concern of any Ryzen 1 series CPU was memory overclocking. Even just hitting out-of-the-box RAM frequencies was a challenge with my 1700X. XMP profile was impossible to turn on, regardless of the motherboard or memory kit used. But with the 12 nanometer stuff, things have dramatically improved. I discussed a lot of this in my 2700X review, which you can check out right here. But in a nutshell, you aren't likely to deal with the same memory overclocking issues this time around, and that's definitely a good thing. My Nighthawk RAM kit hit 3200 megahertz without a hitch, and that's actually overclocked just a bit on the ASUS Strix X470-I gaming. I imagine things would be the same for other kits as well. Speaking of which, let's throw this G-Skill Trident Z kit into the mix. Same thing. So yeah, no problems reaching up to 3600 megahertz with this board, which is actually higher than the advertised frequency limit on the box. So very impressed here, not going to complain at all. So you can probably tell I'm pretty happy with this board's performance and its features. Now it comes in at around 200 USD, which is fair, I think, considering the quality and attention to detail here. One of the best, I think, on the market X470-I boards. My only qualms, 3 fan hubs and an awkward HD audio location, 2 small details that aren't likely to sway you one way or the other. Also, when I overclocked, I didn't touch the voltage preset, so it was set to auto, and I watched how this motherboard was managing voltage throughout different workloads, and it actually did pretty well. It was around a comfortable range I think I would have set it to myself. So some of them tend to just throw way too much voltage. This one didn't do that, and I was surprised because a lot of them in the past have. So possibly a new BIOS revision took care of that, but just something to check out if you decide to buy this board and a 2700 or 2700X. For now, if you want a board like the one you've seen in this video, check the links in the video description for several ASUS X470 motherboards in various form factors from ITX all the way up to full-size ATX. If you're looking to build a small and compact 8-core 16-thread machine though with a reliable and clean-looking motherboard, this one right here, the ROG Strix X470-I Gaming, is the one that I would get. It gets 2 thumbs up in my book, and for obvious reasons. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up if you thought it was cool. Dislike it if you feel like disliking it, or if you hate everything about life. You can click that red subscribe button, by the way, if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more content like this. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.